I picked Mr. Jimothy Carey himself. I don't know
That's
if
not his name, and you know
I
it.
don't know if that's his name. I don't think his name is Jimothy.
His name is Jim Carey, Justin.
Mr. James Carey. Mr.
Jim
James Eugene Carey. And I feel
James. Really, James.
Mr. James Eugene Carey himself. And I felt
Eugene.
that the only
Okay.
place to start logically would be at the beginning. The very first movie that made Jim Carrey a household name. And that movie obviously is Mr. Ace Ventura.
To earn the name Hero, but now there's a new way to spell action. Jim Carrey is Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. He's the best there is.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Pet Detective.
Pet. Dick.
A product of its time.
A real, just absolute product of its time. Oh boy, everyone likes to point out the big old Mr. Winky shaped elephant in the room.
I'm gonna be the awful people on the internet. It's before the internet and the world got all PC and you could make a joke without offending
Before
everyone.
got all
Oh
woke
my
or
God.
whatever. It's definitely like the least funny joke in that movie. It also doesn't really make a lot of sense because like you see the bit at the beginning where you see like unless that the guy at the beginning of the movie who's stealing the dolphin isn't supposed to be Ray Finkel. Big twist, Lois Einhorn is Ray Finkel. Because when you see him steal Snowball, it's very clearly like a man with like masculine hands, but like the Lois Einhorn is very mostly feminine. Doesn't really look
Slender.
very slender. Also, like the plan is really so he was.
Could it not have been just spitballing here that the masculine body that you see at the beginning is perhaps a thug that she hires?
That she just gave the ring to?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what I thought. Because I was like, the whole bit is like the reason why he figures out that it's Ray Finkel is because he finds Ray Finkel's bit of the ring on the bottom. So I guess he just gave his like as a payment, I suppose. But also, the plan doesn't make any sense. Like the thing about plans in movies is the longer period of time your plan takes over, the less it makes sense. So like, you waited all of this time. So Ray Finkel, this like got out of prison or got out of the mental institution,
established themselves as a police officer.
Disguised themselves as a female police officer. Somehow became captain over the course of like 7 years. Became captain of this precinct, all leading up to stealing this dolphin. When there was this pet detective around, the movie implies that they've known each other for a while because he's on like a first name basis with her. So, like, it implies that he's been around and he's a pain in the ass that they all have to deal with and that they all don't like. Who takes animal cases, like, way too seriously. So, like, the movie sort of seems to indicate that this person is reasonably cognizant. Like, they're not totally insane. So, why would, it just seems like a bad, poorly thought out plan that you've thought about for 7 years.
I mean, the answer to that, the true
wizard
answer,
did it.
You're not supposed to think about it. It's a comedy.
I mean, sure, but when you're trying not to think about the Mr. Winky in the room, it's all you think about. And also, I do a show on the internet where I pick apart movies. It's kind of my bit.
I know. I'm just saying, for the standard moviegoer.
I didn't get to watch the second one. I was gonna watch the second one, but I'm like, I can see why. But it's funny because as we will go on, we will find out more and more that Jim Carrey very much resents this guy. Like, this is the guy that went on to do The Mask, Dumb and Dumber. Like, this version of Jim Carrey would go on to resent for the rest of his career. And I will demonstrate that for you today, Your Honor. That's Ace Ventura.
Gets the scent.
Where's Dan Marino?
Hi, I'm Dan Marino.
Marino, why?
Because he's about to join Snowflake.
He'll follow it anywhere. everywhere.
Here, Snowflake.
Jim Carrey is
Do not go in there.
Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so Jim Carrey, obviously, he goes through a bit of he's got to do his movies where he's a dad. I call him dad movies, and that's also Tom Shadyac. Shadyac. I'm gonna mispronounce his name. And Liar Liar. So
Fletcher Reed was climbing the ladder of success.
You're the victim here. Driven into the arms of another man.
7.
Yeah, whatever.
One lie
Tell him it's in the mail. I ran out of gas. You're losing a little weight.
at a time.
The true victim is my client. Put yourself in his shoes for a moment. You're walking from church when suddenly you encounter him pouncing from the shadows.
But what made him a successful lawyer
Your ex-wife called.
I have to go to court this afternoon.
Fletcher, it's his birthday.
also made him an unpredictable father.
Said he was gonna be.
the reason why I could tell that they're both made by the same guy, number one, is they both end where the credits are the blooper reel. You know, like both movies.
yeah.
Which I can still quote so many of them. My favorite one is the one where they're in the courtroom. Overactor, huge. Prenuptial agreement.
Liar.
Nuptial agreement.
Mama.
Yeah. Or
And then in the blooper, he just kisses her as the door is shut and they're
Yeah.
laughing. So funny.
my thing with that one is that the movie really needs you to understand at the beginning that he's a liar, but like a lot of what he
Well, I mean,
says,
He is a lawyer.
yeah, but a lot of what he says are like not really lies so much as like,
White lies.
well, not even white lies. They're like, yeah, like the girl walks up and is like, it has the bad haircut. Like, yeah, any regular person isn't gonna be like, my God, that looks fucking atrocious. Like, obviously you're gonna be like, it
Right.
looks
Right. But Justin, the point is that we're lying to make her feel better. It's
Right.
still a lie by the strictest definition of what a lie is, and that's the thing is, and that's why it works in this movie is because it's like the kid's what, five?
yeah, 5, yeah.
Because the kid is 5, the wish is a 5-year-old's interpretation of
I know,
lying, not
it's
a
black and white.
34-year-old. It's black and white. What he is doing is lying. It's adult lying, but it's lying.
But what I'm
That's
saying is
why it works.
the movie is not giving you a 5-year-old's interpretation of it. It's giving you the adult's interpret, and it's framing it amongst like the weird, that's not really a lie kind of lies, to like it's equating
But
them
again,
to,
From a 5-year-old's
but they're not from a
perspective, it's all the
5-year-old's
same.
perspective. That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
That's the
it
point I'm
is,
trying to
because
make.
that's who made the wish.
No, but what I'm saying is the movie itself is framing these early lies in the early beginning parts of the movie as equal to when he pulls up, and he's also a bad liar. Like, dude, pick a more believable lie. Like when he shows up at the beginning of the movie to meet the son, and he's like late, and the way he's like, oh, I ran out of gas on the way here. He's like, bro, just say you got stuck in traffic. You'd still be lying, but at least it'd be a believable lie at that point. Like it tries to frame those lies as the same as the like, yeah, obviously you're not gonna make fun of the guy to his face. That's not really technically a lie. Like, and those scenes are not like.
Again, from a 5-year-old's
But no,
perspective,
but you're not.
it is.
No, but you're not listening. It's not from a 5-year-old's perspective.
Yes,
like
it is, Justin. That's who makes the wish. That's why the wish is interpreted that way.
No, but
yes, we're seeing it from an adult's perspective,
No.
and that's what makes it clever.
no. What I'm saying is though, the scenes I'm talking about are prior to the introduction of the son. They're at the beginning of the movie, and they're trying to equate these lies in terms of attributing them to his character as the same as the actual lying. Like, yeah, when he says to his son, "Oh, I'm going to show up," and he doesn't, that is a lie. That's bad. Yeah, I absolutely do not blame I'm not blaming the son for having a naive understanding of his father. He has a correct assertion of his father. His father's a lie. What I'm saying is, in film language, the film is trying to present lies that aren't lies as lies in order to make him seem like a bad guy, is what I'm saying.
I mean, in the beginning, he is a bad guy, though.
Yes, but
That's the thing and yes, that is why they're doing that, is because in filmmaking language, you have a set amount of time. You have to establish pretty right
right.
off the bat that he's a bad person.
Right, but what I'm saying is the lies that he's saying they're not bad lies. Like it's casting a
Yeah, well, because that then sets up later on when he tries to do those white lies, as we would refer to them, he can't do those. Like that's why they have
no.
those there, is to set that up later on.
But my point is that they're not that bad. Like they're perfectly reasonable. Like, but
Yes, that's kind of the point.
yes, but again the movie is trying, like if he I guess I'm saying he needs to be more cartoonishly of a liar for a lot of this to be more effective for me. If I'm being critical, this is me being critical.
I disagree.
They're like a lot of the lies he says early on, like they're not lies. They're just not lies.
Yeah, but that's the point. That's why when he then goes back later and can't do it, that's why they have those there, is to demonstrate, oh, it's not just the egregiously bad lies that he can't do. It's the little white lies that make a person feel better.
I understand
too.
that, but
I don't. Those have to be there, Justin.
But what I'm saying is if the intent is to present him as a smarmy liar, you're not, because what he's saying in the beginning of this movie, and I'm not talking once the son gets introduced, and I'm not talking.
It still presents him as a smarmy liar. He's telling people what they want to hear.
But he's not telling people what they want to
But
hear.
is.
He's
saying your haircut looks nice. Her haircut does not look nice.
No, he doesn't say that the haircut looks nice.
I'm just saying as an example.
Right, like all the lies that the movie presents as being
lies,
bad. They're not lies. They're not lies on the same level of him saying, "Oh, I'm gonna be there when I'm not." That's my point is.
But again, that's the point.
But I feel like you're not listening, or you're not understanding what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the movie wants to present lies.
I don't understand what you're saying, because you're watching a movie where it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing.
Yes,
I don't understand where your complaint here is, and it's frustrating me.
My complaint is that the lies that they're presenting early in the movie, that they're not lies. He's not a liar. Like not to.
That's the point.
But it's not the point. The point is they want you to think.
The point.
They want you to think
the point is that they're setting up that not all lies are bad. Not all lies are created equal. That's why those are there. So that when later in the movie, when he can't lie at all, it's to emphasize that not all lies are created equal. That's why those are there.
Yeah, I don't know. I just it wasn't effective for me. Is what I'm saying. Not this time around. It wasn't. I'm like. Yeah,
I don't.
Maybe it's because I'm. Maybe it's because I'm. Well, because what he's saying, he's just a functional adult. Because to me,
that's the point.
But it's not the point. The point is he's supposed to point. No, the point is he's supposed to be this cartoonish, over the top liar. And
yes, but it's supposed to be a thing where it's mixed in, Justin. The white lies and the bad lies are mixed in, and he has stopped seeing the line between the two. But that's the point.
Yeah, it's not.
He sees it all as the same thing.
But again, that's not how it's. I think you're remembering this movie differently, because that's not how it's presented. He's being presented as though you're right. It wants to pretend that it's presenting it to you that way, or it wants you to think he's a certain kind of like to me. They're like, oh, he's the kind of guy who's willing to perjure himself in court. Like, yes, that's like. I guess what I'm saying is his lies needed to be bigger so then when he tries to do,
I don't agree,
because the thing is, a lot of what he's saying at the beginning, it wants to be, oh, he can't say regular or small lies, but he doesn't really say lies that are that big in the beginning of the movie to where it contrasting to him not being able to say any lies is really that effective. Like, again, a lot of the lies, like there's a small scene at the beginning of the movie where he's interacting around adults as though they were adults. And what at that point, they're not really that bad of lies, is my point. So like,
yeah, that's the point.
But I feel like you're not listening to me because you're getting defensive about a movie you like, that you clearly haven't seen in a while. Because what I'm saying is like, there's a lot of times where like, yeah, like a lot of the ways he interacts with his staff, the movie is like, oh, he's saying this really awful thing to them, this awful big awful lie. It's trying to pretend that like harmless like everyday lies are on the same level as when he shows up and he's like, oh, I ran out of gas. Like that that's a useless lie. Like it's pretending like they're both the same, but they're not. Like being nice to your staff and being polite to people and like is not the same.
We're just gonna keep going around and round in circles on this, man.
Yes, but you're not. Let me finish my thought. That to me, it's not the same thing. So like it just that was my main thing this time, where it was like, oh, I remember this character being way worse than he is. I'm like, oh no, he's not. I guess maybe you're right. Maybe because I'm an adult now, I'm like, he's not really doing. Yeah. Also, I appreciated.
He's a bad dad, and that's really the worst part of his character.
That's the worst part of his character.
Is what you're trying to say, and what I'm trying to say is that's the point. This movie is essentially supposed to be from the perspective of a 5-year-old.
But
that's what this movie is.
I know, but I guess maybe
the wish is made by a 5-year-old, so all the consequences that come from it in this movie, yes, the lies aren't that bad. That's the point. Right. That's the point. Full stop. And there's nothing more. This movie doesn't have any deeper layer than that. That's the point. And that either works for you, or, as clearly is the case for you, it doesn't work for you because you're an adult and you can't put yourself back in that mind frame of the 5-year-old who's being lied to.
Because
that's the point.
My point, though, is that's not what this movie is. This movie is not told from the perspective of a 5-year-old. It's not told from the kid's perspective. It's told from Fletcher's perspective, right? And so that is one thing. Let me finish. But the
wish is made by a 5-year-old.
Let me finish. Yes, but the movie is not told from the perspective of a 5-year-old.
Doesn't matter.
But that does matter.
No, it doesn't.
I do appreciate that the movie never explains anything. Like that I appreciate. It never explains the magic. It never, because it doesn't need to. That's not the point. But what I'm saying is yeah, in order for the him getting punished for the little stuff, I don't know. I think it would have been, he needed to be smarmier, I think, in my opinion.
I think it works just fine how it is.
So then it contrasts better to when he's with the son. It comes across as more fake because and then that way at the end when he has the lesson of he needs to be, because they're like, oh, there's this whole
they can't make him smarmier because he has to be redeemable. If he's too smarmy, he's not. No, I don't know. I think it's a classic for a reason.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. I liked it. I thought it was funny. It certainly didn't age as badly as Ace Ventura did. That's for sure.
It's a fun family movie.
It is
that's
fun
my thing.
Family movie where you cringe. I mean, there's nothing. The most realistic bit in the movie was when the boyfriend is like doing the claw. And it's like, dude, stop.
Like this movie comes from the same time period, and this is maybe a weird comparison, but it comes from the same like. It gives me real Jingle All the Way vibes.
Oh yeah, it's Jim Carrey's a dad. It's a dad movie.
Like it's just a dad movie. There's so many of them at that time.
About your shitty divorced dad who somehow gets the girl at the end.
And so I don't know. Maybe it's just a thing where I have my own experiences of life, and maybe I just attribute this movie to certain individuals that I grew up with.
Yeah.
Maybe that influences my thoughts and feelings towards it. Who can say? This isn't a therapy podcast. We're not going to deep dive into our deep emotional trauma here. Is that all you have to say about this movie, Justin?
It also clearly takes place pre 9/11.
Oh yeah, how easy it is for him to airport shenanigans.
Get to the airport security pull airport shenanigans at the end. I was like, I didn't even bother. I'm like, I think this movie came out in 1999. It must have come out pre 9/11.
I would not be shocked. No.
Yeah, that's it. That is liar.
True.
You mean you have to tell the truth?
How are we doing this morning, Consul?
I'm a little upset about a bad sexual episode I had last night.
From Universal Pictures and Imagine Entertainment, and the director of The Nutty Professor, Jim Carey. Liar, liar.
New in the building?
Everybody's been real nice.
Well, that's because you have big...
So my next one, Jim Carrey, he's gone over the years through several identity crises, I would say. And there was a point where he was like, I need to go get back to my roots. I need to do comedies. I need to do a big Farley Brothers R-rated comedy in Me, Myself, and Irene.
He's been a pushover. Lee Brothers, the directors of There's Something About Mary, comes the story of Charlie Bailey Gates. All his life,
Sweetie,
he's been a pushover.
it's kind of dangerous. You want to move it up onto the sidewalk, away from the traffic?
A patsy.
I hate to bother you with this, but your car is going to have to be moved.
Park it up behind the grocery store, will you, Charlie?
A doormat.
Do you people take checks?
You mean the black man?
No. Those things are illegal. Oh, God!
Oh, it's on now.
But inside every guy like Charlie, there's a guy like Hank.
Doctors have
And
Yes.
I don't have a ton to say about this other than it was like one of the first R-rated comedies I ever watched. I remember it being kind of a shock at the time because I mean I knew Jim Carrey from relatively family-friendly stuff, what I considered to be relatively family-friendly stuff. Rewatching Ace Ventura, that movie is surprisingly dirty. It gets away with quite a lot for a PG-13 movie. But for those of you who've not seen Me, Myself, and Irene, the very basic plot of it is
Split personality.
Jim Carrey plays a cop who gets cheated on by his girlfriend, which causes him to causes him to repress all of his rage and emotion, and that bursts out of him in the form of Hank, an alternate personality, and he inadvertently winds up escorting a young woman back to another state where she's going to be arrested, and yeah, it's the road trip movie, and there's split personality shenanigans, and Jim Carrey swears a lot, and Hank is kind of fun. He's kind of a fun character. There's a lot of really fun scenes of him just fucking with people. What was my thing? Oh, the only thing I didn't really care for is his sons, who like it's like
I wasn't gonna say it, but
it's like my thing is it's one joke, and the joke is they're black guys and they're saying stereotypical ghetto black stuff. But they're also
even though they were raised by the whitest man in America.
Yeah, because they grew up watching HBO comedy Richard Pryor specials, and they're massive stereotypes. But the joke is that they're stereotypes who say smart shit.
I can't figure out the atomic mass of this motherfucking Deuteron.
Shit, man, that shit's simple. Look at. Tell me this.
What?
What's the deuteron made up of?
Duh, proton and a neutron.
Then what's this motherfucking electron doing right there?
I don't know.
But get out of there then!
Okay, so you saying I add up the atomic masses of the proton and the neutron, right? Mm-hmm. I sees that, but what do I do with the goddamn electron? Can I bring it over here?
Enrico Fermi'd roll over in his motherfucking grave if he heard that stupid shit. I mean, he just turn over ass up in your face. He wouldn't give a fuck. Man, Jamal, man, just cut.
Yeah, like, contrary to what the stereotype would actually be.
Yeah, so they're all saying hyper intelligent, like highly scientific formulas and stuff, but like it's all with the air of like stereotypical black guy speak. I ghetto speak. I don't know what the word is. I immediately apologize. Don't cancel me. And it's just it gets really old, and it's. I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's gonna be like, get in the comments like, Justin, actually that those characters are hilarious, and you're an idiot. But I don't know. It got so old so fast.
I just for me, the reason why I'm not fond of those characters, is because I feel in a movie that otherwise, for what it is, holds up decently well, they age it.
I don't disagree with that, yeah. Especially considering I'm pretty sure Anthony Anderson has a gold tooth. Like, it feels slightly racist. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being
like, maybe I'm being a little pearl clutchy. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But
I don't know.
It feels like I watched that and I'm like, it's okay. I can watch this. I have a black friend.
Yeah, I have a black friend. Yeah.
It gives me those kind of vibes. Also, like you should feel ashamed for watching it.
The bit where he beats up the cow, and then at the ending, the post credits, it turns out the cow is okay. The cow's okay, everybody. Cow's okay. Don't even worry. The cow's fine. Just trying to think of the bit where he gets cotton mouth. I always thought that was like a makeup effect, but no, he can actually do that. That's how he does Fire Marshal Bill.
Interesting.
Yeah, the whole thing with this one is that it's a Farley Brothers movie, so it's gross and weird and
over the top is
over
the word
the
I would use.
top.
Like they were like, you know what, Jim, just do whatever you want.
Yeah, pretty much.
Just you have no reins. Just go ham wild.
Right? Yeah, it's always funny because like one of these later on, I read it and it's always like Jim Carrey is back in form. We're not talking about Sonic today because we're gonna do a Sonic special later on. But probably in December when Sonic 3 comes out. But yeah, every review for his movies is always Jim Carrey is always like acts surprised that he's good in a thing. It's kind of funny. This thing I don't think was received terribly well, but that's it. That's me, myself, and Irene.
About that, buddy.
Warns me about what?
Charlie?
Jim Carrey.
Look, I'm not here to twist your niblets.
What?
Sound good, candy bands.
Me, myself, and Irene.
I mean, you should be furious. I just drop kicked you right in the face.
Hey, it happens.
Jordan, I need to confess something to you right now. The Jim Carrey parts of this episode are going to become a YouTube video that I'm probably going to entitle Jim Carrey, You Used to Be Cool.
Jim Carrey, what happened to you? You used to be cool.
I like that better. Jim Carrey, What Happened to You Used to Be Cool. But this section, I'm calling the weird dramatic stuff, or Jim Carrey Wants an Oscar. Boy, howdy did Jim Carrey want an Oscar. He wanted an Oscar so badly. And he just
I mean, either he wanted an Oscar or his manager told him he needed to win an Oscar.
No, I think the thing about Jim Carrey is he's a deeply, and I see the thing I discovered through these movies. He said every movie he made, it was at a particular point in his life. It represents a particular feeling he had at that moment. And a lot of his feelings, a lot of his dialogue in a lot of his movies are similar. He reminds me a lot of me. And when I found out that he was like massively depressed,
that's upsetting.
Minus the end point, which we're going to talk about. But otherwise,
you don't know. You haven't gotten to your end point. You have no idea.
I might turn into a weird conspiracy.
You might go crazy.
But my next one is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Safe, effective technique for the focused erasure of troubling memories. In a matter of hours, our patented non-surgical procedure will rid you of painful memories and allow you a new and lasting peace of mind you'd never imagined possible.
This is a hoax, right? I assure you, no. Is there any risk of brain damage?
It's on a par with a night of heavy drinking. Nothing you'll miss.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Which he made, or he did when he was going through a really nasty breakup. And
reflects.
There's a line of dialogue in there where he's like, why do I always fall for the women who say the first nice thing to me? And I was like, oof, I felt that. But for those of you who have never seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, you should. It's a good movie. But no, it's about
It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's about a couple. It's been a while. It's about a couple.
It's been a while.
Played by Kate Winslet and Jim Carrey, called Clementine, and his name is Joel. And she is effectively a manic pixie dream girl, complete with multicolored hair and weird ideas of monogamy and being in a relationship. And he runs into her accidentally and discovers that she has gotten a procedure that has effectively deleted all of his memories, all of her memories of their relationship, all of the dates, all of the every. So far as she knows, she's never dated him. He finds this out and gets upset and never met him. He finds this out, gets upset, and opts to have the same procedure done on him. And the movie is basically him re-going through his memories as they're slowly erased. While we see the people who are doing this to him. Spoiler alert, by the way, for this 20-year-old movie. But you find out that Elijah Wood is there, and he has been using all of Joel's journals and information and basically all of his words, like right down to identically the same words, to her and using it to seduce her and date her.
Clementine.
Clementine, yeah. And it's really gaslighting her. So it's fucking with her brain. And it's funny because they like the movie sort of present like there's one guy in the early on in the movie where the guy has had it done like 5. First of all, this procedure's fucked. Like let's just get that out of the way right now. This procedure is a fucked up thing. Like no, you can't just avoid your trauma.
Like there would be some real people standing out and just looking at how our world works and going off of that, it feels like you would have some real mobs standing outside protesting this procedure.
It reminds me of, and this is going to be kind of a divergent, so just stick with me on it. There's a show called, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, I doubt it, but it's called Severance. And the plot of it is that Adam Scott, does that name ring any bells?
Kylo Ren.
No, that's it's not Adam Scott. Adam Scott, who do you know Adam Scott from?
Boy Meets World?
Yes, he absolutely was on Boy Meets World. He was Griff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was also on to bring up something I've been watching recently that I'm surprised didn't kick in. He was on The Good Place.
He was on The Good Place. Yes. He basically has he works for this company and he has volunteered to have his consciousness split into the version of him that works and the version of him that's at home. And they're two different people and they're unaware of what the other does. And the one who's working, the whole bit is he didn't consent to this. He didn't consent to work. He didn't make any choices.
This sounds familiar.
I've probably told you about it before.
I think you've told me about this.
It's quite a very good show, but that's what this reminds me of the present day. There's a bit at the end where basically eventually you find out that one of the staff that played by Kirsten Dunst has been having an affair with the doctor who's created this procedure, and he's like, oh, you insisted that you have the procedure done. And she basically sends all the files to everybody, and you find out that he it's one of those like, she's like, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't want to have this procedure, and he goes, we talked about this, in that tone that's like he's the one who wanted to do it, not her.
There's absolutely no real world comparisons that could be made there. No. Certainly none that we're going to touch on here because that is a big ball of yarn.
But there's a whole point at the end where they're like listening to this and they're like, oh, I would never do that. Oh, I would never do that. And it's like, yeah, man, that version of you is now dead. The version of you that has that memory is now like spiritually dead in a sense. And in this version of you can't consent to that. You're now a new version of you, and you didn't consent to losing those memories. So that's not, to me, that's morally, there's some sort of moral. I don't know if it's morally wrong, but it certainly feels morally wrong. And I'm not even mentioning like.
What's funny is very much. This makes me think. Funny enough, this makes me think of The Good Place because, they go through like 800 versions of themselves in that show, and so there's a point where current Chidi is like, morally, there's the question of like. A version of Chidi and you fell in love, but it's not me because that version of me ceased to exist, and it's exactly what you're describing.
Exactly the same, right? And not even mentioning the fact that Joel didn't consent. Like, if I know it's like her body, but also I don't know. It just feels like that he, like, it feels wrong to do that to him. I know it's not. I guess the argument could be made it's not about him, but there's just something that feels wrong about that. You know what I mean?
About deleting him from her mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, but the argument is that it's her mind. It's her right to delete him from her. It's the equivalent. This in their world, this would be. I'm going to play devil's advocate. It's like she just deleted you from her phone.
I guess I could see that argument. But my other thing with this is they do this thing of like he's interacting with a version of Clementine the whole movie. And she's being like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Oh, I mean, blah, 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 blah. And it seems like she's also going through an arc, but she's not really, because that's not really her. It's his imagination of her. So like my one tweak I would maybe make to this, and I don't know how you would do it, and it's only a small one. I would have it where they're having their memories deleted together. That way.
Interesting. That way, the version in the mind is actually her.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise,
And then,
a lot of their
so
interactions are kind of meaningless.
if you did that, then you could also, from a metaphor standpoint, have it essentially be like it's a divorce procedure. You have to divorce from each other and delete each other from each
Yeah.
other's mind.
Yeah.
And then that way you could have a final scene where they're hitting the end of everything be deleted, and like you allude to the fact that like there's always some small part of them that survives, and that's
Exactly.
why in the real world they meet each other again, they fall in love each other again, and it's this big metaphor of, oh, when you're meant to be, you're meant to be, and you fall in love, and
Exactly.
yada yada yada.
And also, yeah, what's his face? Elijah Wood's character is scum. He's fucking scum.
Oh yeah,
Like the guy.
So is the doctor.
So is the doctor, and it's weird because the movie kind of implies that, kind of hints that maybe because Mark Ruffalo is also in this movie, and they hint that he might also have done the same thing to create. Yeah, I was like, holy shit, that's Mark Ruffalo. What the fuck? It sort of it tries to be like he didn't know, but it sort of implies that maybe he did know. And it's like, yeah, there's no, in my opinion, ethical version of this. There's no ethical way to do this to somebody.
No, there's absolutely not.
Like, it doesn't matter how much you consent to it, how much you agree to it. It just doesn't feel like there's. Yeah, it's like the temptation is always going to be there to use this information against them.
I also just feel like that's kind of the point, is that it's not ethical.
I guess maybe that is the point, because at the end of it, they're like, fucking, and it kind of, whole thing kind of falls apart at the end. So maybe you're right. Maybe this is where I will agree with you and say maybe that is the point of it ultimately. Also, it's got a weird scene where Jim Carrey, some of the humiliation scenes were weird. Very strange. It's a visually interesting movie. There's some really fun stuff to do with angles.
It's one where it's like, it's this one, I will say it's been a long while since I've seen this one, but from what I remember, I respect it because it takes chances.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is very much him being like this is where he, like I said, this is where he really wants to. And to be fair, he's well acclaimed for his performance in this movie. He's human in this movie, and I think that's what makes this movie really reminds me of Black Mirror in a lot of ways. But it has a sci-fi bent to it. But he's the most human I think he's ever, at least in the movies I saw this week, that he ever is. The most like a regular person. Like I think I discovered. I enjoy Jim Carrey when he's a regular person and he's not just a big cartoon character now more than I do the cartoon character stuff. As much as I love the cartoon character stuff.
I think it depends on what I'm in the mood for.
But also, I'm gonna make the point later that he maybe had perhaps pushed it too far. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed. Like I say, I love the bits where it's like he's a kid. Like it's in his kitchen and he's a kid, and you see like it's shot from a different perspective, so he looks smaller but he's still a kid. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Oh god. Okay, that's it for the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Everybody's in the place, and don't you know it's a beautiful new day. Hey. Running down the avenue, see how the sun shines brightly in the city, on the streets where once was painted distant blue.
Can you hear me? I don't want this anymore. I want to call it off.
Little movie called, and Jim Carrey was like, I need you to understand that when I proceed to make fun of this movie, Jim Carrey was proud of this. He thought that this was going to change everything for him and that he was going to be a serious dramatic actor. I'm not even exaggerating. When I was reading about this movie, there's quotes from him saying as such. It's the number 23.
Suppose I'm buying that for you, too.
Actually, I've had a good long time to flip through it. Why don't you give it a try?
The number 23, a heart-wrenching odyssey into paranoia, one of the most horrifying metamorphoses ever told.
I'm buying this for you.
Chapter 1. All I could think about was the number. I met you when I was...
23.
And the day we met was?
September 14th.
9/14. 14 plus 9 is?
23. See, okay, so I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here. I liked the movie, but not as a horror or a thriller. I
It's
think it's a
a-
comedy. I think it's a fantastic comedy.
I mean, okay, if you want to look at it as it's like satire of those kind of movies, maybe, but no, it is 100% sincere and
Like if it is supposed to be sincere and earnest and like they want it to be scary and intense,
it
then
is.
no, it
It is
absolutely fails
absolutely
at
supposed
that.
to be sincere. It's like
But
he
but
thought it was going to be like his Sin City.
when I watch it, and when we were talking about this last night, this was like what I was trying to articulate it. When I watch it, it's a comedy.
Okay.
It's funny. It's satire.
There are
It's
parts.
amusing.
There are parts of this I like. Okay, like
2 plus 3 equals 23, and that's the same as the number as the thing, and that's oh my
My
god.
name
it's
is
so
my name is
strange.
Gary. That's 9. What is
That's
that even?
7
Where are you
letters
getting these?
plus
Okay.
9 plus, and
Okay.
yeah, so it's to
I don't
me,
even
it's
know where to start
comedy.
with this. Okay, number one, numerology in terms of. I was trying to think of how to explain this, and I finally figured out a way. Like numerology, when it comes to conspiracy theories, is kind of like mime when it comes to theater. It's like the bottom of the barrel of like even conspiracy people are like that shit's nuts. Like so anything to do with and I think the reason why it's particularly aggravating with this is because you just know Jim Carrey actually believes in numerology. Like you just know he does. You just know he actually believes. And the thing that's wild about this
by now he does.
like
Yeah.
I didn't know the number 32 thing, that's real. Like that's a real thing.
Isn't it 23?
Yeah, I know there's a real thing where people think that the number that everything that's 23, everything
Not 30. Yeah.
yeah, everything that's in this movie, the number 23, like that's a real theory. That's a real thing that people have. It's based on a real thing. I'm not even kidding.
Hilarious.
I was reading about it. Yeah, it's so dumb. But like I
See,
don't
that just makes the comedy that is this movie even better.
I quite like that. Okay, I'm gonna spoil this stupid movie. But the ending, it turns
People are
out that
dumb.
basically the plot of the number 23 is Jim Carrey's wife buys him a book, and as he's reading, he finds all these connections to the number 23 and this character
his
in this
life.
book, which has a remarkably similar to his life, and he becomes obsessed with it. And the big twist in the end, and it turns he's trying to find out who the author is the whole movie, and the big twist is that he's the author, and that it's all an elaborate metaphor that he basically killed his girlfriend. Murdered her, hit her body, and he's a murderer. And he basically snapped and like wrote this book as it would start out as a confession, became this long novel where everything had
Manifesto.
metaphor. But like, so much of it requires on. Okay, so and the thing was, he wrote this really long manifesto that the doctor who was looking after him published into a book, gave it a fake pseudonym, and coincidentally, put it in the same bookstore that the guy's wife like shopped at. She just so happened to pick up this book, and while incensed and crazy while writing it, he, knowing that he would somehow, after killing himself, read this book because the secret message he finds at the end specifically says Sparrow, so it's talking to him. He, while writing this manifesto, managed to think far enough in advance to be like every 23rd word. Like he would have had to have like thousands of pages of notes to make sure that the message lined up exactly right. Otherwise, it's a weird coincidence. And the movie never really like seems to indicate as to whether or not it's real or not, or whether or not he's just insane. And that's to me that bit that's frustrating. Because I don't think I like the twist that it's a guy reading a book about like this guy who like is going through this drama with somebody where he hurts or kills somebody, and then it turns out in the end that he's the author. Like I like that twist. That's a fun twist. But it's just there's so many fucking coincidences that have to line up perfectly for the plot of this stupid movie to happen. And then sandwiched on top of that is all the numerology bullshit.
So okay, here my headcanon for the book, like the wife finding the book thing, which I just thought this up, but it makes it funnier for me is his doctor who released the book and sold it and got, made decent amount of money off of this his patient's book, has been stalking the person that wrote the book for years, and he's gone crazy, and he planted the book so the wife would find it, so that the insane patient who wrote the book in the first place will then write a sequel, which he can then take and sell.
That's
my head canon.
My thing I would maybe to make it. I mean, it still would be nonsense, but I was expecting her to be in on it the whole time. I was expecting it to be like she was like, oh, she's like his doctor or something, or she has some sort of established relationship with him. But yeah, it has his. The
She was a
ending
nurse.
is the end. Yeah, I thought she was gonna be like his nurse or something, but no, the ending is just like no, she had no idea about any of this, and it's so. And what's even weirder is like the book is written so he gets to the 12th or the 22nd chapter and it ends with him killing himself, and he's like, oh, I need to find the 23rd chapter, which
Isn't it attempting to kill himself because he obviously survives?
well, yeah, and then it turns out that the third shade is like, oh, I am actually not Fingerling. I am actually, and it's his real name. It's not even like he's lost his memory. He has amnesia, but it's still his actual name. It's not like his like original name is a different name. So I'm like, wait, really? It took you like, and the thing it tries to be like, oh, the number gave me 12 years or however many years break because I was going after the doctor. But again, it doesn't really make it clear as to if the numbers are real or magic or it was just, man, it was a nonsense of a movie where he was the scenes where he's the detective is Fingerling and he's got his stupid tattoos and he's trying to be serious and it's just not working. I don't even think it's a performance thing because there's some good moments of performance in there where I'm like, no. Jim Carey
thing.
Yeah, Jim Carey can absolutely. He doesn't have and this is the thing I discovered as he went on. He doesn't have the confidence to be a dramatic actor. He's scared of it. He wants to do it, but he's so scared of it that he does it in these weird, bad. So I'm like, when he's like, oh, I made every movie I ever made when I was in a particular headspace. I'm like, is this where the weird conspiracy nonsense started? Because like, it sure seems like it might have. Anyway, that's my last rapid fire. I think it's time.
Don't do this to us.
Never hurt anyone.
In my continued journey of Jim Carrey wants to win an Oscar, whenever anyone thinks of Jim Carrey dramatically, this is kind of the one movie that they think of, and that's the movie. Well, one of two ones, but this one is The Truman Show.
From the largest studio ever constructed, it's The Truman Show!
Yeah!
Good morning!
Good morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
What if? No scripts, no cue cards.
Morning, Spencer. How's it going?
What if you were watched every moment of your life?
Yes.
A ever-present and ever-relevant, socially relevant movie to this day. Because, man, that movie understood not even just... What I learned that was interesting is... I was like, oh, surely this has to like predate reality television. And no, it doesn't. Apparently Candid Camera premiered in the 40s. And it was called Candid Radio back then. Yeah. It was before television was really a thing, but it was called Candid Radio. So the notion of reality television is actually pretty old. But my thing with this movie, beyond the fact that it's fucked up,
very.
Like they buy this child. They buy this baby and like they legally adopt the baby, which feels illegal. And throughout the movie, they don't really treat him like he's a human being. They treat him like he's an animal in a cage. Like he's
even less than that. They treat him like a prop.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but with their attitude towards him when he escapes, like they're really acting like he's like like an animal who's escaped from the zoo, from his cage. Like he's in a cage. Like that's what it is. It's like he's in captivity. Like them instilling a fear of drowning, of wanting to leave is so fucked. Like it's so fucked. And like if anyone ever wants to know what gaslighting is. Like, if you have a friend who asks you, "Hey, what's gaslighting?" Make them watch The Truman Show, because this movie is just, every character in this movie just gaslights the hell out of him. Like, the at one point, the wife, like, he's starting to like go crazy because he keeps seeing things, and the wife is like doing advertisements while he's having this breakdown, and he's like,
Let me get you some help, Truman. You're not well.
Why do you want to have a baby with me? You can't stand me.
That's not true. Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
What the hell are you talking about? Who are you talking to?
I've tasted other cocos. This is the best.
like, who are you talking to? Like, why are you doing? And then she freaks out as if it's his fault. It's like, well, no, you're doing this to. Why would you take this moment to sell a product? Like, are you like insane? Like, what's wrong with you?
It's in her contract.
Yeah, but like if you're trying to deceive him into thinking that everything's normal.
I mean, that's not even the word. The fact that you have engineered him to fall in love with this woman who cares not even one iota for him or like anything, and like, yeah, no, his entire life is a lie.
Or
That's
his best friend who claims to care about him, who's just being fed lines through. I do think that they give away the game too early, in my opinion. Like, I think like, because there's it's initially kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not secretive, but like, you're not 100% sure. Like, you know he's part of his show, but you don't know everything. And then about midway, they finally pull back the curtain and they show you like everything from the people who are making the show's perspective. Like, you meet the guy who created it, all that. I think they should have not shown that he was on a show early on, and like let you wonder what's happening with Truman. Let you be like, what's this weird conspiracy that's going on? Like, let you be like, what is this? What's happening? And then midway, you find out he's on a show. Yeah, more of a thriller kind of thing. And yeah, you midway, you reveal that he's on a show, and you're like, oh, so that's, and then have it be more of a twist. I think maybe would have made this slightly more interesting. And yeah, once again, he's more of a human here, Jim Carrey, and it makes him more interesting. And they, of course, have obviously been talking about doing a sequel to this, and they're like even in universe, Truman's show ended. There's now this vacuum and this void in this world.
Yeah, what would all those people move on to?
Right. Where would the world go to? Like, especially
what fills the gap?
Like, especially like if you introduce the element of social media, there's just so much you can do with this idea of like of this reality show of these characters. You know, of this like person who's on a show.
I see a Black Mirror episode of this where,
I mean, it's already basically a Black Mirror episode.
No, I know, but I'm saying what the follow up to it would be. I see it as it's not even a person. It's like a AI human.
Yeah.
Who thinks he's a person, and as they pull back the show, they find out that he's not a real person, and it goes off the rails.
That would be kind of interesting. I mean,
I see a version of this story where it's that.
The problem with Jim Carrey movies is every one of them, I'm like, yeah, you could do a sequel to this, but every one of them wants Jim Carrey to do it, and so they wait around for way too long. But it's like, yeah, you could absolutely, you could do one of two versions of this: a version where it's a new person, or, I mean, I would be interested in seeing a sequel where it's about Truman. Like, how is he interacting with the world? Like, he's fucked, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you can,
what's this?
I see two versions of it. One where you get Jim Carrey
the psychological fallout?
Yeah, where it's the sequel of like his entire life is a lie. He's on the outside, and everybody knows him, and he has to deal with everybody knowing him, and the like the fallout that comes from that. Or you have the other version where he doesn't come back, and it's now like 10, 15 years later, and another studio has started it again, and it's essentially a reboot.
That would be kind of interesting. Also, a thing I noticed this time watching it was his last name is Burbank. He's Truman Burbank, which is obviously it's a reference to the fact that he's on a soundstage, and like Hollywood stuff happens in Burbank, California. There's a lot of Hollywood studios there.
Ah, I never even thought of that.
I know. I picked that up. I was like, that's clever. Just trying to think. Is there anything else I had about the Truman Show? A lot of it's really funny. Like when he goes to the travel agent, where it's like he could now in today's day and age he could just book this himself.
Yeah. Or he could contact Flight Center by Susan Spur and use her perfect service to help him book it.
He could get off that island. Just trying to think, was there anything else?
Throw it back to our sponsorship.
Yeah, my thing is like I would love to know like what did they think was gonna happen when he became an adult? Like did they think he was never gonna like want to venture out?
He is an adult, and they expected that he was never going to want to venture out, and that they could keep him contained and have the show go on until he died.
My thing is like, what is the payment structure on that show? Like, you got like he's known the one guy who's been doing the show since he was like since they were kids. Like, what's the pay scale like?
Do they have like a yearly meeting where he talks to the bosses and is like, all right, if I'm going to keep doing this show, this contract negotiations, I want another $2 million on my salary here.
Right?
Like, and like, and I don't know how to say this tactfully. Does she who marries Truman get paid extra for performing her wifely duties?
I mean, they do say in the show you never get to see anything.
Because that feels like a crime. No, but whether you get to see it or anything or not, as far as Truman is concerned, he's married to her.
Yeah.
Did she get a bonus for performing the?
That's funny because he's aware. The honeymoon? He's completely aware that she doesn't like him because he's like, you hate me.
Like. So yeah, there's a lot of uncomfortable implications about this world, right? And the more you think about it, and the more you pick it apart, the more you're like, yeah, this is a horror film.
My thing is like, it's just
I don't
how
know,
is any of this legal?
It's supposed to be a thriller, but like
no, it's supposed to be a drama. It's supposed to be
yeah, and I'm saying it's not a drama. This is a horror film.
This guy's a victim. Like a corporation was able to adopt a child. This doesn't feel legal. Like I don't know how is any of this not a crime? I don't understand this. But
are they filming it in like Switzerland or something?
No,
I remember.
No, they're in like a random soundstage. That's the whole thing.
No, but I mean the location of the soundstage.
Oh, I don't.
I seem to remember. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I seem to remember it's in a place where the laws are lax, and that's how they can get away with it.
They refer to Truman as being the first child adopted by a corporation. I don't think they say where the soundstage is. I assumed it was in California, but hold on, let's just see.
Because I would tend to believe, just in order for it to make sense to me, that like they either built an island in the middle of the ocean and they are their own place, which is how they can legally get away with it, or it's in a place where those types of laws would be very lax.
All it says is Truman's hometown Sea Haven Island is set in an enormous soundstage, which allows Christof, the show's creator and executive producer, to control most of the aspects of Truman's life, including the weather. So it's an advanced soundstage. It does not. He wants to go to Fiji. Maybe that's what you're thinking of. But no, it doesn't. It doesn't specify where specifically it is.
Interesting.
I'm assuming California, considering his name is Burbank. His last name is Burbank.
I just don't. You're right. That would be my one big suspension of disbelief issue here. Is it
sounds like a crime.
It seems like a very big crime, which would not be allowed.
It's clearly not, because they're airing it on television. But
I suppose the reason why it's allowed, in terms of a legal standpoint, is because I imagine because his parents, like the parents that are on the show, are his actual parents.
No, that's the whole thing. No, they're not his actual parents. He is adopted by the corporation that owns the show. That's the whole thing. So
I'm pretty sure I remember it being that the parents are actually his parents. Yes,
No,
I don't think that's right.
Not according to the Wikipedia and the movie. No, they're not his. They're not his actual parents.
I feel like that's not right.
He was given up by a he's selected at birth and legally adopted by a television studio following an unwanted pregnancy. Truman Burbank is the unsuspecting star of the Truman Show. So he's legally adopted by.
Okay, but so then he is adopted by parents that didn't want. So my point is that he, legally speaking, would have been like they essentially would have signed away their rights.
I'm sure like his legal parents is probably like the CEO of the company or something.
Yeah, and so at
he's an orphan. He's technically an orphan if you want to get specific.
It's scummy, but at that point, I can see the legal loopholes.
Yeah,
that would enable it to be.
But to me,
happen.
I'm weird. I find that stuff interesting.
Is it ethical? Oh, it's very unethical.
I would watch I'd watch either a prequel or I mean, to be fair, they could also do a prequel. I would absolutely do a prequel about season 1.
I mean, yeah, they could literally just do a movie where it's about not even just like when he was a kid, but just like moments through his life.
Yeah.
Before he discovered he was on the show. I would kind of do like I would almost. One way that I would maybe do it is I would do it where the framing device is we are with like a family or with someone who are watching the show.
Oh, I mean, no, my idea is more like
we watch the show.
My idea is it's about the creator and it's about the creation of the Truman Show, and like, cause surely you're right. Like if there would be like people protesting this or like
one of them was the girl that was on the show.
By the time we got to it, it had been on the air for like what 30 years. But like I would love to see the first year of the show and see like how they created it, the ethics of it, like explore the ethics of this, because surely somebody has questioned the ethics of this. I mean, they do kind of, but not really.
Yeah, for me, it's like I think you could almost just reboot it and do that with another actor.
Oh yeah, I mean yeah. Well, that's why I'm saying you don't need Jim Carrey. You just
This is an example of one of his movies where you don't really need him.
You do a prequel and you make it where Truman's a kid and you just got Truman's name. It's not Jim Carrey. But yeah, you don't need Jim Carrey for this. I mean, it's such a relevant topic, like supervision by a media company. It's just so present in our lives right now as we. Hello, YouTube. Anyway, that's and Spotify. We bow to our corporate overlords. That's the Truman Show.
Want to do it again? No!
Find it. Truman, where are you going?
You can do it.
How do we stop him? Give me some lightning.
Is that the best you can do?
Cut transmission!
I like your pen. I was wondering that myself.
Jim Carrey. The Truman Show. Watch what happens.
Well, it's sort of two. Because I watched one and then I watched the other as a kind of a companion piece. So it's The Man on the Moon!
Hello, I am Andy.
I want to be the biggest star in the world. Your act is like amateur hour.
I'm not like everybody else.
I really like what you did out there.
I'm not a comedian. I don't want to go for cheap laughs.
You jerk!
What's wrong with this guy?
They detest you.
That means we're a success.
If you believe they put a man on the moon.
And I also watched Jim and Andy The Great Beyond because I felt like I couldn't talk about one without talking about the other. Now, for those of you who have not seen Man on the Moon, it is a biographical picture about the life and career of one Mr. Andy Kaufman. Kaufman. I don't know. Everyone pronounces it differently. He played Latka on Taxi, and he wouldn't say he was a comedian, but have you seen Man on the Moon, Jordan?
Yeah, long time ago. I watched it as a kid.
How would you describe Andy Kaufman?
Dick.
Like he's like an internet troll before.
Okay. You want a more in-depth one. If you've ever been to the to the Tenacious D concert back in the day. He was like a hamburger,
Neil
Mr.
Hamburger,
Hamburger.
kind of, yeah.
Neil Hamburger. He's what I would describe as anti-humor.
Yeah, anti-humor. Yeah, where like he'd show up and like he'd
He's
stand
meant to be
there.
disruptive. He's meant to be like a problem, and that's
Yeah.
supposed to be the joke, but it's not funny.
I don't think it's funny, and so I mean, it depends. There's some of the things he did that I think were kind of funny, like the Mighty Mouse, where he stood there and he would just only ever do the "Here he comes to save the day," but he did. Stuff like he professional wrestled women, and he had because he was fascinated with the concept of kayfabe, and so he had this fake beef with Jerry Lawler where he got into this huge fight, and he had this fake lounge singer character called Tony Clifton, which he would actively deny was him, and he had a writing partner in this movie played by Paul Giamatti, called what's his name? I can't remember what his name is, but he would also sometimes dress up as Andy Kaufman. And in terms of a movie, it kind of makes Andy Kaufman look like it makes him look like he's odd. He did seem like this movie seems to, from what I can understand, drastically misunderstand him, because it makes him seem like he's just kind of a prick who was incapable of being a normal guy or like working well with others or anything like that. Like he was constant, like it was always hard to tell whether or not he. And so at the end of the movie, in real life, Andy Kaufman died of cancer, and so there's a scene. He had a cancer tumor on his lung, and there's a scene at the end where he goes to his his manager and the Paul Giamatti character and his girlfriend, and he's basically like, "I have cancer," and they're like, "Shut up, that's not funny." And my first thought was like, what must it be like?
Wolf says what?
Right, yeah. As a man, what is that like to live? Like living your life like that can't be fun, or enjoyable. Or how is that fun? To every time you try to say something serious or have a serious point or have a serious feeling about someone, everyone just laughs at you and assume that you're pulling a prank or that you're joking. To the point that like people thought that Andy Kaufman faked his death and that he was just gonna like miraculously come back to life and it was all gonna be some big joke. And the movie kind of implies that's what they think, because at the end, the final scene of the movie is Tony Clifton shows up to perform, and you think it's the Paul Giamatti character, and it pulls over, and Paul Giamatti's in the audience, implying that Andy Kaufman is still alive. And there's a thing at the end, and this happened to him in real life, where it's like, fuck people who this is the spur of the moment position on this. Fuck people who do psychic surgeries. Fuck you, you're the worst. Where he goes to this, he's the kind of guy who he's into like real like spiritual stuff, but because like this, like he's into meditation and all that stuff.
Oh, so he's nuts.
So because no, any people who are into meditation and all that stuff, no, that can be beneficial. We have to be fair-minded. But the psychic surgery, believe me.
So he's a hippie.
He's a hippie, kind of, yeah. And he at one point gets kicked out of his group because of the wrestling with women and the vulgarity. Like he gets on David Letterman and he cusses out Jerry Lawler. And as far as a performance goes, it's a really good performance. Like he does a really solid Andy Kaufman impression. He does quite an impressive Tony Clifton impression. And there's a lot. What's kind of neat about this movie is when he's on Taxi, it's actually the cast of Taxi are there playing themselves.
Oh yeah.
What's his face? The guy who runs something Lorne Michaels. Anyway, the guy who does SNL, he shows up as himself. And what's weird is the cast. Danny DeVito is in this movie. He plays
the guy from Taxi.
No, he plays Andy's manager, George Shapiro. But in the scenes with Taxi, Danny DeVito isn't there as himself. Which is really bizarre, yeah. And so at the end of the movie, he's going to get the psychic surgery, and he spots the guy doing the sleight of hand to do the psychic surgery, and he kind of laughs at the bitter, like, universal joke that the guy who constantly tried to prank people and like like screw people over or whatever, this guy, he sees that as a big joke. Yeah, and it's a good performance. He's not Jim Carrey in it. There's a point where he like just kind of becomes Andy Kaufman.
From Milos Forman, Academy Award-winning director of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Amadeus.
You're insane! But you might also be brilliant.
Comes the story of the man, the myth, the misunderstanding.
So you just pretend to be an asshole?
That's what I'm good at.
This Christmas, Jim Carrey brings the legend to life.
I would like to take this entire...
Which leads to... Jim and Andy the Great Beyond.
How would you start this movie?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim Carey, and how are you this evening? Alrighty then.
Finding out you have something special and it gets a reaction. That's how I got attention and love.
I've watched the stars fall silent from
Andy Kaufman came in to turn reality on its head and not stop when the camera stopped.
Andy Kaufman cared less about making his audience laugh than keeping them confused.
He blew my mind. When I heard I had the part, I was looking at the ocean, and that's the moment when Andy came back to make his movie.
Hello. Is a documentary about the making of The Man on the Moon, which apparently this is true. Like Universal didn't want to release the rights to the didn't want to release the behind the scenes footage of making of The Man on the Moon because they thought it would make Jim Carrey look like an asshole.
Down hard. Who's they? Universal didn't want the footage we took behind the scenes to surface so that people wouldn't think I was an asshole.
Andy, you have to give me a chance.
Which he does. He does look like a big ol' asshole in this movie because he method acts. He method acts the whole time. When he's on set, he refuses to answer to Jim Carrey. He will only answer to Andy Kaufman. The entire time he pretended he was Andy Kaufman. Like, he pretended that the ghost of Andy Kaufman had come down from heaven and possessed him, and he became Andy Kaufman. And so then there's points where he's talking about Jim Carrey, like, in the third person. Where, like, Jim Carrey thinks that this is going to be his, like, big break, and he's finally going to be respected as an actor. And he's finally gonna, you know, get that whatever. He's finally going to be respected, and this is going to be his big moment. And he's really self-conscious about this, that, and the other thing. And
it sounds to me like Jim Carrey had a full mental breakdown.
Well, it's either he's gone through a full mental breakdown, or he's like doing it on purpose. And the movie, because he thinks that's what, because at one point he starts to become friends with. Oh man, I'm gonna have to look up the guy's name. But he becomes friends with the real life guy who Danny DeVito who Paul Giamatti plays. It's gonna be easier to. Bob Zmuda, that's what his name is. He plays he becomes friends with Bob Zmuda, and so it implies that him pretending to be Andy Kaufman thing is all a bit, like it's all a joke, because he'll talk about like at one point he as Tony Clifton goes to Amblin Studios and starts yelling he wants to talk to Steven Spielberg so we can yell at him about I think it's about Jaws, about the shark. I want to talk to him about the shark or whatever. He just starts, and there's points where he's like absolutely wasted. At one point, he's like, there's several points in the movie where Jim Carrey's just standing around smoking a cigarette, and he's like, "I don't smoke. What is this? I don't do this. I don't smoke. Why am I smoking?" Like, and it interchanges between appearing as though he legitimately thinks he's Andy Kaufman. And
sounds like he had a full mental breakdown.
And it's just like, imagine, like, at the end of the day, movies like this remind you that the movie set is still a workplace. Like, imagine if your coworkers showed up and started behaving like that. It would be awful. It would be terrible. And
especially when you're doing 12, 13, 14-hour days.
And like, he says a bunch of like conspiracy riddled. Like at one point, like, "Oh, I don't believe in free will. No, I picked up this tea. Did I pick up the tea, or am I just thirsty? I don't believe in." And he's doing weird shit like that. And it's
so what you're describing sounds a lot like modern day Jim Carrey.
Yeah. Well, this is modern day Jim Carrey. well, I should say, sorry. I should mention the documentary is framed around Jim Carrey telling this story. So every once in a while, it cuts to interviews with modern day Jim Carrey.
So
and he just looks dissociated. He just looks off.
Everything is are these abstract structures that you're given. And it's supposed to hold you together somehow, And I've just given them up, I don't need to be held together. I'm fine just floating through space like Andy, just flying 6,000 miles an hour around the...
Yeah, I don't think he's well.
Like, he just doesn't... It's like, man, he became insufferable. And this documentary is just showing him at his most insufferable. And it's exceptionally frustrating because it doesn't really show anyone else's perspective. It's all his perspective, and it's all made to look as though he did a good thing. Like, one of the most ghoulish things he does is he has this conversation with the real Andy Kaufman's family as Andy Kaufman, and he's like, oh, it's this like therapeutic moment where I got to talk to his daughter who never actually got to meet him in real life. And like, dude, that's so manipulative and awful, and like, you're just like an actor in a movie, man. Like, this is not
ghoulish.
Okay. Yeah, ghoulish. It's so ghoulish, and it just makes him seem like it does. The movie makes him seem like just an absolute prick, like an absolute asshole. And yeah, he says, like, in the movie he says, oh, he never really came back from that, and I'm like, it kind of. But this movie came out in 1999, so I already talked about, like, Bruce Almighty, and he did a bunch of Me, Myself, and Irene. Like, he did a bunch of comedies after this, but they are him trying to recapture Ace Ventura.
Yeah, he would say that was him trying to put the mask back on.
That's what they feel like. That's what these movies feel like. He feels like an insecure man who didn't want to be known for one thing, and instead of trying to evolve and like embrace that one thing and doing it, like, he didn't go through like a 5-year career surgence where he did a bunch of dramas that were well received and then came back to comedy. And it makes me wonder if, had he done that, maybe yeah, we'd be talking about him differently. But yeah, it's my general summation, and we're gonna talk about some the stuff I hadn't seen. But yeah, I just remember this documentary was frustrating because it doesn't tell anyone else's perspective other than one moment where they interview. Well, number one, you can see the director Milo Forman. He's getting agitated. At one point, he calls Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey relates the story of how he calls him. He's like, I just want to work with Jim. I don't want to work with Andy. Oh, I don't want to work with Tony Clifton. And Jim's like, oh, well, you can fire them and I can do an impression. And like, no, I don't want to get rid of them. I don't want to get rid of them. And you can tell
that is insane.
Right?
What do you mean you could fire them? They're not there. You're a guy who's wearing an outfit.
Right?
Just do that, but be fucking professional.
Just be normal, Jim Carrey. Be normal.
Not even normal. Professional. Right? Be professional.
Like, at one point, he's like, he as Andy Kaufman, because Jerry Lawler is also there as himself. He's playing himself. And they're recreating these moments with Andy Kaufman. And like, at one point he keeps like trying to like verbally abuse Jerry Lawler. Like, at one point he tries to like push him, he tries to hit him. He's basically trying to get a reaction out of him and trying to instigate him. And like, Jerry Lawler is just confused. He's like, I don't understand what's happening. It's like Jim Carrey doesn't understand Andy Kaufman at all. It's like, yeah, on camera we did this stuff. Like when we were in front of people we did this, but like behind the scenes he was very professional and like very nice. And like, it wasn't real.
My friend.
Yeah, and my friend, and it wasn't real. And Jim Carrey just doesn't seem to understand that. At one point, Jerry Lawler like does a power bomb and powers him on his neck and like nearly breaks his neck and nearly punches him in the face, and like they get into this huge fight. And he's just like, yeah, he's the only one you really get to see his perspective on Jim Carrey's behavior during that movie, which, yeah, I don't know if this movie is meant to make him look better, but it doesn't. If anything, it makes him look worse. And yeah, the fact that it's like framed by weird modern day awful Jim Carrey, who's, again, and I'm gonna say this again, insufferable. it just was like, oh, I didn't mind the Man in the Moon. I quite liked it, but yeah, the Jim and Andy the Great Beyond, incredibly frustrating experience. That I would, if you ever want to be like, if you know any actors and you want to be like, don't be a douchebag method actor, show them this movie. This is why.
Couldn't remember who I was anymore. So you step through the door not knowing what's on the other side. What's on the other side is everything. I know him as well as I can know him. But who do you know, even when they're right in front of you?
First, have not seen is a very, very long movie. Oh my God, was it a long movie? Called The Majestic.
You never come back.
What in the hell happened to you, son?
Not exactly sure.
Once upon a time, a stranger came to town.
Jordan, have you seen The Majestic?
No, I've never even heard of it.
The only thing I remember, the number one thing I remembered about this movie was I remember seeing a trailer for this movie when I was a kid and being like, that actor looks like Jim Carrey, and it's just not looking like him, but like it looking close enough to him that I just be like, that looks like Jim Carrey. And then it getting to the part of the trailer where it revealed, oh, the shit, that is Jim Carrey, because that was at the point where he was still like Ace Ventura, The Mask, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, okay, this is a heavy, schmaltzy, sappy drama movie where Jim Carrey is a writer in Hollywood in the 1950s during the height of the Red Scare, the Red Panic. And for one reason or another, he is believed to be a communist. And so he gets investigated for being a communist, and he gets kicked off of, fired from the movie he is currently making because he's a writer in Hollywood. And after that happens, he gets very drunk and very depressed, and he goes to drive, and he gets into a car crash, and he wakes up in this little town with amnesia, where this town mistakes him for this like guy who went off to war, because there's this town where a bunch of their family members went to war and then didn't come back, and so they think he's one of them. And the movie is basically about him getting to know him, trying to regain his memory and get to know this town. And he rebonds with one of the gentlemen who owns the theater, the Majestic, who thinks that Jim Carrey is his son. And and then about midway through the movie, the dad dies, thinking that Jim Carrey is his son, which causes Jim Carrey sees the poster from one of his movies, which causes his memory to come back. And and to his credit, he goes to leave because he's like, I'm not this guy, I'm not this person, whatever. And as he's about to basically confess and be like, oh, I'm not this guy, the investigators or whatever for this panel, for this red communist investigative panel, whatever, comes and takes him back to effectively put him on trial. And my thing with this movie is, you said the previous one was confused. This movie would be stronger if you didn't know who he was as well, because you know that he's not this guy so much, because this movie's 2.5 hours long, and so much of it is him like trying to get his memory back. But you're like, but it would be better if it was 15 minutes shorter and it started with him waking up in the town and not knowing who he was. And then you find out that he's not this guy, and you find out who he is, and then you reveal who he is in the back half, because he has this really long monologue in this courtroom that feels like it's from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is a reference you're not gonna get, but it feels like it's from a completely different movie. Like it has nothing, and so then he's like, oh. He does this big speech. Everyone thinks he's this big hero, and he goes back to working for the movie studios, and he realizes like that's hollow and that's not what he wants. And he like goes back to this town, and they all give him this like hero's welcome and welcome back, and everyone is like, oh, you were pretending to be this guy. And it's kind of like, well, no, he wasn't really pretending to be this guy. the town thought he was this guy and kept trying to convince him he was this guy. And so they're all like, yeah, sorry. At the end, it kind of has this vibe of like, yeah, sorry. We understand, that was kind of our bad for making you think that you were maybe this guy. That's kind of our mistake. But yeah, it's just kind of it's like emotional in a way that's hollow and like meaningless, if that makes any sense.
Cotton candy.
Not even cotton candy, but like it's like, yeah, schmaltzy is that the best kind of like over the top level of drama where it's like it's too much, it's too far, and he's a good dramatic actor. He is. He just picks bad movies. Like that would be my thing. Is he picks bad movies that don't stretch his talents like nearly enough. And yeah, this movie's too long. It needed to be 30 minutes shorter. It would have been a much better movie if it was 30 minutes shorter. Trying to think. It's a lot of like, this movie could only take, like, he shows up and everyone thinks he's this guy. And it's like, this is a movie that could only take place in the 1950s, because if it took place today, it wouldn't happen. You'd have photographs of this guy to know that he doesn't look anything like him.
Right. Right. Product of its time.
Yeah, and then there's a big moment at the end, and here's a moral question for you. So this guy thinks that you're his son, and he's dying of a heart attack, and you've now realized that you're not this guy. Do you let the dad die thinking that you're the son if it makes him happy?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's because that's what Jim Carrey did. Yeah.
Let him live with the with one last happiness.
Yeah.
Do one last kindness unto him.
Yeah.
Rather than let him die in terrible sadness but
it has a ridiculously weird happy ending, and yeah, it's all right. It's not the worst of his movies. You know what? We're probably gonna do it. We'll do a ranking of worst and best, I think, at the end of this. But that's it. That's it for The Majestic.
Enough heartbreak. Who are you really?
Just a guy trying to figure things out.
From the director of The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile comes the story of a man brought back to life and the town he brought back with him.
You don't know what you meant to this town suddenly being alive.
Jim Carey. The Majestic.
Stone, Jordan, the final in our Jim Carey palooza.
His career slaps.
He said it. He said the thing. Burt Wonderstone.
Welcome to the amazing world of magic.
Wow.
Everyone loves a magician, and they'll love you too.
Do you want to be my partner? More than anything.
I'm Burt Wonderstone.
And I'm Anton Marvelson.
But of course, you already knew that.
Your ticket sales suck.
What? Burt Wonderstone isn't really a Jim Carrey movie. It is more of a Steve Carell movie. But have you heard of Burt Wonderstone, Jordan? The Incredible Burt Wonderstone, I believe, is the full title.
No.
So, Burt Wonderstone, The Incredible Burt Wonderstone, it's about Steve Carell and Steve Buscemi. Both play stage magicians in Vegas. A sort of similar in sort of style to Siegfried and Roy, but without animals. But in terms of their story...
Is this pre or post mental breakdown?
This is 2013, so probably pre or just around there. One of the reviews said Jim Carrey's back to doing it. This is, I believe...
It might still be enjoyable then.
Oh, it is. It is actually. I mean, to be fair, he's not. We'll get to it. I'll get to it. Give me a moment. So yeah, Steve Carell and Steve Buscemi play stage magicians, and Steve Carell they've basically been residents at this casino for like 10 years, and they've sort of fallen apart as a duo. They hate each other. Their whole bit as they do big stage illusions. So like one of the tricks they do is they pretend you've seen it 1,000 times on Penn and Teller Fool Us, but it's the one where they pretend to hurt one of them and the other they they have a hood on, they remove their hood, and they've swapped, like that kind of trick. So like,
Okay.
yeah, basically the plot of the trick is it's a hangman's noose, and they're looking like they're gonna hang Steve Buscemi, and they put the hood on him, and then Steve Carell puts the hood on, and then they hang him, and then the guy who's standing up front of the stage takes the hood off, and they've swapped places. You know that kind of trick? Yeah, you've seen it. They do like one of those. They do. There's one point where they're doing one where it's like they're stabbing swords into the box. It's basically really boring.
It's a classic.
Yeah, really boring stage illusions where you're like, yeah, I know how this works. In the meantime, on the scene has appeared Jim Carrey, who is basically Chris Angel. He's just Chris Angel.
He's the mind freak.
Yeah, like he's literally got a show called Mind Rapist. Like that's
Oh my God.
He's got like the long hair. He's one like he his whole thing is he's doing like the extreme tricks. And this movie is good, but like it's good if you're familiar with magic. Like there's a lot of like hyper specific jokes about Vegas magicians and just stage magicians generally that like I find funny, but a regular person might not. Like there's a really funny bit where Steve Buscemi and Steve Carell have broken up, and Steve Buscemi is doing this like documentary series where he's going to like the third world and like doing magic tricks for people in like Africa or like Asia or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, are you going to get these people food?" He's like, "No, I'm just here to do magic for them." And that's clearly making fun of Penn and Teller had a similar special called Penn and Teller like Travel the World or whatever, where they did the exact same thing, and it's clearly making fun of that. And he's like, I get that, but I'm like, is a regular person gonna get that? And like, yeah, I'm laughing at the fact that the magic tricks, like, there's a really funny bit where they break up, and Steve Carell is trying to do all the magic tricks by himself, but he can't because the other guys. It's sort of like the magician equivalent to that bit from Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny, where it's Kyle Gass singing half the song. Yeah, where Kyle Gass is like singing half of the song. Yeah, it's kind of like that. And
that's funny.
There's and it's all the little stuff. Like there's a bit where later on where Steve Carell runs into Alan Arkin, who's basically like an aging magician who is teaching, who basically quit magic when he discovered he had sort of lost the love of it. And it's like him explaining exactly why Fool Us exists, where he's like, your job as the magician is you have to understand that every time, I know you've seen this trick 1,000 times, but they haven't. And it can't look like you have, because if it looks like you have, the whole point of magic is like making a person temporarily believe that the impossible is possible. And it was like, this is exactly what Penn and Teller say about Fool Us. And there's a bit where he's like explaining this to Steve Carell, and he's got this little jar, and he smacks the jar, and a dove comes flying out of it. And Steve Carell has this look on his face, his mind's blown. And he's like, "How did you do that?" And he's like, that is why we do magic. That look, that moment. And I'm like, that's what Fool Us was about. That was about Penn and Teller were like, we don't get to do that anymore. It's about finding that for us. And I'm like, yeah, as a person who's a lover of professional magic, of stage magicians, I really love this movie. I really appreciated it. And there's a really fun bit. So obviously the whole bit at the end is the casino owner who they worked for, he eventually gets fired because of drama, and he's opening up a new casino, and it's a performance-based movie, so they have to perform well at the big performance, and they're trying to figure out how are they going to do that. And they're like, the one trick that they can never figure out how to do is how to make the audience disappear. And there's a lot of really cool scenes of like Steve Carell of doing sleight of hand, where I'm like, oh, he's clearly not doing sleight of hand. And when you look it up, it's like, no, he actually did learn sleight of hand for this movie. And he's doing some impressive sleight of hand, yeah. But anyway, sorry, the big final trick is they decide that they want to try to make the audience disappear. And
right.
They've never been able to make a whole audience disappear. And it's kind of a neat moment of it gets to the end, and they're like they've gone through the resolution, everyone's all happy, they're all friends or whatever. And they're like, oh, if we get... They basically, one of the countries that Steve Carell has been traveling, or Steve Buscemi has been traveling to, they're all addicted to this drug that knocks you out for an hour, which is a specific amount of time. But so they spray the audience with this mist, and it knocks them all out. and then they all wake up like thousands of miles, outside of the casino outside, and they're like outside now. And then
So
it cuts back.
that feels like a crime.
Well, that's what they're like. They're like, oh shit, it's a crime. It's like this is definitely a crime. It's definitely a crime. And they're like, now we're gonna do it. And then they make the audience appear in this field, and then they make them reappear back in the theater. And the ending credits shows how they do this trick, where it shows them get sprayed with the mist, and they put these gas masks on, and they just start tossing what is clearly dummies. Like they're just dummies. They're just tossing them around and like dragging them around. They set up in the chair, and it cuts to all these people, and they all have like black eyes and shit from being like tossed around and shit. And so then they all go through and they all put makeup on their faces to make sure they look okay. And it's just kind of funny because it's like, yeah, to see, oh yeah, that's how a trick like that would be done. And yeah, it's very for someone who appreciates
the
art of magic, it's really funny. And yeah, as it really goes all in on Chris Angel.
Steve Gregg, they're calling him the future of magic.
This guy's a magician. He doesn't even have a costume.
I'm sure you've seen people walk on red hot coals, but I doubt you've seen anyone spend the night on red hot coals.
Ends with him. He's like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Because the whole bit with him is they're like, oh, he's too extreme. Like he's too extreme. At one point, Steve Carell has studied the art of like sleight of hand, and he's doing this children's birthday party, and like Jim Carrey shows up, and he's trying to like do these really gnarly extreme tricks or whatever. And so his big, like at one point he does this bit where he's like, oh, I'm gonna hold my pee for like 10 days, and there's this really funny bit where he's being interviewed by this reporter, and the reporter's like, how are you feeling? And he's like, I gotta be honest with you, man, I really gotta pee. And then there's all sorts of like weird, insane shit like that. And so his final trick he does is he has this drill, and he's like, yeah, I've discovered that I can drill a certain, like if I hit the right spot, I won't drill through my brain. So he ends up drilling through his brain. And it was one of those like
sounds movies, ridiculous.
You know how like with it's similar to Sonic. Remember how when Sonic came out, everyone was like, oh, Jim Carrey's back to being Jim Carrey?
Yeah.
That's what the reviews were like for this. Basically, we're like, oh, Jim Carrey's finally back to being Jim Carrey again. So when you're like, oh, I think it was sort of after that, like he's done Man on the Moon, he's done weird bad dramas, and like there was another weird drama that was in 0% on Rotten Tomatoes that I thought about watching. But I liked it, but it's not really a Jim Carrey movie. It's more of a Steve Carell movie than it is a Jim Carrey movie. But I would generally recommend it.
For 12 days, he's held his urine.
What is going through your mind?
I really have to pee, Richard.
It's time for my final disappearing act.
Where did he go?
He has gone to a better place. Goodbye, Rance.
He's under the bed.
I know.
Now, Jordan, you gotta ask me.
What was your favorite?
See, I was thinking about that when I asked you, and I think it's gonna be Ace Ventura. Like it's torn. It's a kind of a three-way tie between Ace Ventura, Bruce Almighty, and Liar Liar. I love those movies.
Yeah.
I love those movies. I could still quote so much of Liar Liar by memory, but Ace Ventura is like, that's where my comedy career, for lack of a better word, my instinct for comedy, my desire to be a comedian, it's that and a lot of Robin Williams. But like being able to quote this movie like almost word for word. Yeah, it's poorly aged, but some of the jokes are still funny. And it's like, it's the start of that three, like this, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber all came out in this like same year. So it was
they came out within very rapid succession.
Yeah, exactly. So he was like massive. And yeah, in terms of like a first outing for his it's probably my favorite. You're gonna ask me what my least favorite is, aren't you?
I'm gonna ask what your least favorite is, and then what you think objectively the worst is. So first, what's your least favorite?
I think it's my least favorite is probably Jim and Andy: The Great Beyond.
I suspected that it would be.
Yeah.
And so then, objectively, what do you think is the worst?
Number 23, easily. It's the number 23. That movie's terrible.
That's fair.
That is terrible, incomprehensible nonsense.
From an objective standpoint, I would agree. From a non-objective standpoint, I think it is a fantastic comedy.
I don't know. It's so funny because I'm always the guy who's who's like, yeah, you love a movie because it's bad. And occasionally I can do that, but I think it's because part of me knows that he probably actually believes that bullshit. That and just like and just
yeah.
it's so underexplained and so much of it. Yeah, it's like a hair too far in the ridiculous for me to enjoy it for being bad. But hey, everyone's got a movie they enjoy for being bad, so I respect it. I'm not gonna say I don't respect your love of this movie because it's bad. I think I've sat on this show and said I like this movie because it's bad. So I'd be a hypocrite if I faulted you for that.
It's just another Jason X, where it's like it's not a good movie, but I derive some enjoyment from it.
It's not that for me so much. But Jim Carrey, my ultimate summation of Jim Carrey, and I've said it a few times already today, but this is it. He's in terms of a performer, he's insecure as both a person and a performer. He's clearly gone through some stuff. I always suspected it was drugs, but yeah, he is insecure as a performer.
For legal reasons, we must state that these are opinions, and we are not making any definitive statements about whether or not Mr. James Carey has ingested
any illegal narcotics. No.
Yes.
But his behaviors would suggest that he had. But no, he clearly is ashamed of. He says he will always appreciate, but he's clearly ashamed of being known as just a clown. But he couldn't find the right film. Like he couldn't find good. Like I'm just saying, if Truman Show had turned into like Good Will Hunting, like he needed a Good Will Hunting, and he just never got that. And I don't. But I look at his filmography, right? And I'm like, oh, where's his great big final hurrah? His big final, like, this is the big final movie. And I'm looking at the back half of his filmography, and like it ends with 3 Sonic movies in a row. And I love those movies, but that is kind of depressing.
I mean, it's definitely different.
From a guy who went from like multi-million, he's the guy who wrote a $10 million check to himself, to now he's doing the Sonic movies. I don't know. It's a weird trajectory.
He's doing a thing that he finds fun. I don't know.
I suppose that is true. Anyway, that was Jim Carrey and Will Smith. Next time, another actor we do.
Sorry, real quick. I choose to believe. I to a part do believe that's him. That's legitimately him trolling the world, and like that's his way of being like, you people all wanted me to do sequels for years on all these other movies, and the one that I'm gonna do 3 times is Sonic.
Yeah, there's so many. That's the thing, is he's the guy who. Well, to be fair, he did one sequel. He did Ace Ventura 2. It was poorly received and a horrible experience, and he never did another one again. And all of his movies, everyone wanted, and there were so many movies where they wanted to do sequels, but they wanted him. And there were so many times where it's like, nah, you didn't need him. You didn't need him. You could have made this in like this franchise. He held franchises back, in my opinion, by not wanting to do sequels, but not.
But I just feel like him doing the Sonic one 3 times.
It does feel like a little bit.
His ultimate like.
Fuck you,
pardon
basically.
the phrase here, but yeah, his ultimate fuck you to Hollywood is
basically
what it feels like.
It seems that way. He drives me crazy because he does nothing, especially in that Jim and Andy Great Beyond documentary. He does nothing but criticize this. Nothing irritates me worse than a person who criticizes the system he participates in. Like, I'm sorry, you don't get to bitch about the fact that about Hollywood when you're part of Hollywood. Sorry, I'm sorry.
For me, it's not even just that participate in, but actively benefit from.
Yeah, it's hard for me to take you complaining about the nefariousness of Hollywood, Jim Carrey, when you made millions of dollars from them. Like, you're such a I can't stand hypocrites, and he just strikes me as the filthiest hypocrite.
Biggest.
But anyway, that was Pick an Actor 2. Next.
Wow, that video wound up being way longer than I thought it would. But what do you think? Leave a comment below. When did Jim Carrey stop being cool? What happened to him? When did he stop being cool? When did he start being like an absolute insufferable douche? Let me know in the comments below. You know what? Let me know, what's your favorite Jim Carrey movie? What's your least favorite Jim Carrey movie? Have you seen any of the movies we talked about in this very long video? Or you can click on the left side of the screen, and that'll take you to the full podcast where we also talked about Will Smith movies. We talked about a bunch of Will Smith movies too. Or you can click the right-hand side, and that's going to take you to a video that YouTube has decided you might like. Otherwise, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, and we will see you next time, everybody!